The power of the pause. What stops you? Leading with aliveness is recognizing that each moment carries both risk and revelation, and stepping forward anyway. While writing this book, I co-led a retreat with 50 directors and board members who moved in such a way. Their work was in the poorest and most violent cities in the United States, where they were giving children a path to and through college. The second day of the retreat, I found myself next to Jim, one of the directors, as we watched the sunrise. And afterward, I got to hear his story. It began when Jim, as a volunteer, returned from a camping trip with a group of students from the Urban Promise Academy. Bruce, the founder of Urban Promise, was there to greet them. "How did it go?" Bruce asked. Without thinking, Jim said, "You know, if I could really do what I want to do in life, it would be to figure out a way to do this full time." Bruce looked at him. "What stops you?" he asked quietly. Jim remembered thinking that was a stupid question. As a 53-year-old business owner from a prosperous community 15 miles down the road, he thought it was obvious what stopped him. Still, the question kept gnawing at him. 2 weeks later, Jim decided to put it to rest by telling his wife, Rayanne, what Bruce had asked him. He was sure she would give him the list of what stopped him. But she didn't. "Jim," she said softly, "it's what you've been prepared for. This is the voice of aliveness." Within a year, Jim had sold his business, founded Urban Trekkers, and begun a new adventure as Mr. C, one that would open teenagers from Camden, New Jersey, to the wonders of the natural world. Urban Trekkers began with outings to local mountains and rivers, where students learned to hike, climb, camp, swim, and canoe. By the last year of high school, they were ready for the ultimate adventure, the senior rite of passage. The first cohort began with a grueling 20-mile loop over the summit of Mount Marcy, New York. Next, they looked up at 70 feet of sheer vertical rock, facing their first climb. Finally came the ultimate adventure, the overnight solo experience that carried both risk and revelation. As they stepped into the boat that would take them each to their separate islands, they grew quiet. During their time alone, they were to see themselves at 50 years of age and, from this vantage point, write a letter to their current selves, a letter with the life mission they wanted to hold and with guidelines for the life they intended to live. Then they were to find a symbol of something they needed to release in order to move forward. Most would be leaving Camden for college, and Jim kept tabs on all of them. He recounted a conversation with one student, Tyrone, before his graduation with a degree in accounting. Tyrone had been apprehensive about college because when you tell someone you're from Camden, all they see is the 5 o'clock news. He paused, then continued in a raw voice. But I had another story. Urban Trekkers gave me my stories. When I had papers to write or was just chilling in the dorm, I had my own stories. Such stories are stored in our bodies. They are a shortcut to the power of the pause, a state of simply being. All it takes is a photo or a journal note to bring us back. Finding the pause. The power of the pause is being attuned to the body and open to the universal, be it nature, humanity, the cosmos, or the divine. It is embodied and transcendent, timeless. The pause opens us to the existential questions. What have I been prepared for? What brings me alive? What stops me? In time, as we sense our essence, anything non-essential simply falls away. Today, the persistent uncertainty and chronic not knowing keep us on the edge. They disrupt sleep, impair memory, and scramble internal cues on when to move, pause, or pivot. We are unsettled, the opposite of what people need. Thus, it is vital to pause and to remember we belong to something vast that, in the words of physicist Carlo Rovelli, we are made up of the same atoms and the same light signals as are exchanged between pine trees in the mountains and stars in the galaxies. We tap into the universal in moments of awe and express it in chills, tears, and woes. Dr. Keltner, professor of psychology, has studied this phenomenon for more than 20 years, and these expressions are universal. In all cultures, we're moved by the wonder of the natural world and the moral beauty of others. By making music and mourning together, by a newborn's first cry and the dying's last breath. We sense the spirit, and here I use the word in its original sense. In Latin, spiritus simply means the breath, animating principle, or life force, the very essence of the aliveness effect. The power of the pause is simply being, whether we are wrestling with a life-changing question, just chilling at the end of the day, or attending an executive retreat at Sundance. The Sundance Promise. Sundance is a casual resort nestled in the lower ranges of the Rocky Mountains. It was here that the Covey Leadership Center hosted Principle-Centered Leadership Week in the 1990s. At the time, the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, by Stephen R. Covey, was a global phenomenon. Leaders came from all over the world, the private and public sectors and all branches of the military, to reflect on life and the nature of leadership. We began with the Sundance Promise. If you will open yourself to the natural environment, the people around you, and timeless principles, you will find personal and specific answers to the leadership challenges and opportunities you face. During the week, we explored the principles of leadership as we hiked up to Stewart Falls, read wisdom literature, and reflected on where we came from and where we were going. The Aspen Grove became a metaphor for living systems and resilient cultures. The capstone would be a few enduring principles we could draw on as a source of security, guidance, wisdom, and power. Principles we could turn to when riding high on success and when things came crashing down. Stephen was in high demand, meeting with CEOs and heads of state, yet he was never rushed. Even when he returned from 2 days at Camp David, he just drove up the canyon and strolled in, ready for Q&A. Stephen was known to say, "It's easy to say no when there's a deeper yes burning inside," and he lived it. In stillness lies strength. Some leaders return to Sundance every few years, and Doug Conant was one of them. By the time of Franklin Covey's 2001 CEO Summit, he was CEO of Campbell's, and I was preparing to lead the experience. Tied to the launch of Jim Collins's Good to great, why some companies make the leap and others don't. The summit would feature Stephen and Jim and welcome 20 CEOs. Then came 9/11. Because I lived in New York City, the tragedy hit close to home. And when I flew out to Salt Lake City, the flight was eerily empty. It was an unnerving time. I began the session by asking the CEOs if they had been personally affected by the attacks. One by one, they spoke of their financial partners who had died in the towers. Their spirits laid bare, they reflected on their losses and responsibilities. And I remember thinking, take off your shoes. You're on sacred ground. After the break, Jim shared his research on good to great CEOs and their way of being. These executives embodied a powerful paradox, deep personal humility paired with strong professional will. And their humility didn't dilute their power. It concentrated it. Sundance and the Executive Summit became the foundation for Doug's and my collaboration, first at the Campbell CEO Institute and later at the Higher Ambition Leadership Institute. Along the way, we walked, we talked, and we wrote the New York Times bestseller, Touch Points, creating powerful leadership connections in the smallest of moments. In hindsight, the how-to for leading with aliveness. Doug lived the power of the pause. He began every day by taking his coffee outside as he watched the sun rise and the garden come to life. This was his time to reflect on the issues of the day, both personal and professional, and to seek the right frame of mind to constructively deal with them, and sometimes say a little prayer. His intentions clear, he was ready for the day. At his CEO Institute, we were working with 24 leaders at a time. The intention was to help them find their leadership voice, so they could help others find theirs. Doug co-led every session. The inner resonance he brought into the room invited others to come alive in their own way and to realize how powerful they could be together. The first cohort began on the New York Stock Exchange, where we visited the Campbell's trading post and met with the chair of the exchange. 2 years later, we completed the journey in the Pocono Mountains, where the poet David Whyte took us beyond the ticker tape of time and into the transcendent. We then sat in silence, watching the bonfire, journals in hand, contemplating the life we intended to lead and our guiding principles. We would soon need those principles as a source of security, guidance, wisdom, and power. A year later, Lehman Brothers went belly up, triggering the global financial crisis. You will be opened. Before going to Assisi, I spoke with a dear friend and Franciscan friar. You will be opened, he told me, almost like a prophecy. Open to what? He smiled. I don't know. To Sophia? Wisdom? I went with a friend who knows Assisi well and who wrote a book on the power of the pause in Danish. We soon settled into the monastic rhythms of lauds and vespers, the physical rhythm of long walks in the mountains, and the hedonic rhythm of slow food and strong wines. The fourth day was a holiday, and as the streets filled with tourists, pilgrims, and politicians, we escaped to Eremo della Carceri. It was there, in this quiet oak forest with natural caves, that Francis and his brothers would seek solitude. When I entered the cave of St. Francis, I was struck by the silence and sat down. There, walled in stillness, my breath deepened, my mind grew quiet, and time disappeared. My body began to rock as if moved by big, soft buffetings that would catch the heart off guard and blow it open, like the wind and the wild ocean in Seamus Heaney's postscript. Open to what? To the life force. On future visits, spaced years apart, that opening would happen again. This energy is available to all of us when we are open and receptive. What power do I actually have? The power of the pause is rooted in a German language proverb. In der Ruhe liegt die Kraft. In stillness lies strength. The deep resonance of der Ruhe, spoken in German, deepens the breath and settles the mind. The harsh consonants in die Kraft are forceful and potent, as in the life force, Lebenskraft, or the primordial force, Urkraft. In inner peace lies power. We have the power to give the body a sense of safety through daily routines, honor the body's natural rhythms, create a space of inspiration we can tap into at any time, such as photos, music, quotes, journal notes. Not knowing keeps us on edge. Stress hormones flood the system, judgment falters, burnout looms. The way back begins with physiological intelligence, knowing when to step back from the brink, when to give the body a break.